still wrestling with creation versus evolution. If you're new with us, understand this is a different kind of teaching series. It's very different. I got into it thinking that I was tired of our students and my kids and your grandkids hearing these things in class and having no way to defend themselves. So I thought, simply enough, we'll just talk about creation versus evolution. I'll give you a few pointers and see if we can understand how to defend ourselves better as Christian people. Again, understand I have a bachelor's degree in engineering. I'm a professional engineer. I like science. I think science is a good thing. It just needs to be focused with reference to what it says. And it's always, if we allow it to take care of itself, it will always lead us back to God. As I've been showing you for the last 6 weeks, every bit of science shows us God. They just have preconceived conditions on where it's going to go. No matter what this science leads us to, they're going to take us back to evolution every time. No matter what the dating says, they're going to take us back to an Earth that's 13.7 billion years old. Every time. And so I want to understand that. I want you to be able to defend that. But more and more, I want you to be able to trust God's Word. The big picture here is not the creation. Now, again, as I told you, I got into this thinking this will be a simple, little kitschy little sermon series. More and more, it is the root of who we are. What do you believe? What do you believe? Are you like most Christians that hear Genesis 1, yes, God made it in 6 days, but it was also 13.7 billion years. God made it in 6 days, and He made the people here, but He made it through evolution, through one cell dividing into another, and mutation after mutation. Most of us would be there. Sadly enough, your children, if you're not there, if you're of the generation you really didn't get indoctrinated with some of this, your kids are going to somehow try to put these two things together, and you need to keep them on track. Because one does not work with the other. It's oil and water. You cannot mix them. They will separate themselves back out. God will be shown big, or the world will get in its way, but God in the end is still going to be shown big no matter what happens. In this, our little life here, we may be diverted, but in the end, God is going to win this thing, and we're going to remember that. And so this is a big deal. It really is. It's not near as kitschy as I thought it was. God is trying to show us that His Word means something. Now we're starting to trek through the Bible. We dealt with young earth. We're dealing with evolution now. We last week dealt with Job. What does Job say about creation? How did God make it? So if you have trouble with Genesis 1, already you've got trouble with Job. Okay? Today we're in the book of Proverbs. Beautiful, beautiful Proverbs. If you don't read through the Bible, at least you can read through the Psalms and the Proverbs each day. Take one and add 30 to it, 1, 31, 61, 91 of the Psalms. And on the second day, 2, 32, 62. Just go on up through that. You'll get through all of the Psalms in a month, okay? And you can read one proverb a day. And at that point, you're getting some wisdom. You're getting a little bit of God's Word. So at least do that. But we're wrestling through this, and we've got some good things to talk about today. But our overall passage for this is in Colossians. Colossians 1:16, and I want you to say this with me. For everything was created by Him in heaven and on earth, the visible and the invisible, whether thrones or dominions, or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through Him and for Him. So if you have trouble with Genesis, you already have trouble with some of Paul's writings in Colossians. Now I want you to watch this little video clip, and we'll come back together in just a minute.
The defense has brought to Hillsborough a great expense and great inconvenience. 6 noted scientists. Their testimony is basic to the defense of my client. For I intend to show this court that what Bertram Cates spoke quietly one spring morning in the Hillsborough High School is no crime. It is incontrovertible as geometry to any enlightened community of minds.
In this community, Colonel Drummond, and in this sovereign state, exactly the opposite is the case. The language of the law is clear, Your Honor. We do not need experts to question the validity of a law that is already on the books.
Well, what do you need? A gallows to hang him from?
That remark is an insult to this entire community.
And this community is an insult to the world. Your Honor, I request permission to withdraw from this case.
Mr. Drummond, you can't quit now.
Why not? You were ready to 5 minutes ago.
Colonel Drummond, what reasons can you possibly have?
Well, there are 200 of them. And if that's not enough, there's one more. I think my client has already been found guilty.
Is Mr. Drummond saying that this expression of an honest emotion will in any way influence the court's impartial administration of the law?
I say that you cannot administer a wicked law impartially. You can only destroy. You can only punish. And I warn you, that a wicked law like cholera destroys everyone it touches, its upholders as well as its defiers.
Colonel Drummond.
Can't you understand that if you take a law like evolution and you make it a crime to teach it in the public schools, tomorrow you can make it a crime to teach it in the private schools, and tomorrow you may make it a crime to read about it, and soon you may ban books and newspapers, and then you may turn Catholic against Protestant, and Protestant against Protestant, and try to foist your own religion upon the mind of man. If you can do one, you can do the other, because fanaticism and ignorance is forever busy and needs feeding. And soon, Your Honor, with banners flying and with drums beating, we'll be marching backward, through the glorious ages of that 16th century, when bigots burned the man who dared bring enlightenment and intelligence to the human mind.
If you've seen that movie, it's a good movie. Inherit the Wind. I hope you've seen it. It's an interesting movie. You can get Spencer Tracy, 1960, great show. But what it's from, again, they made it fictitious people, but the concept's the same. So in the 1925 Scopes monkey trial, again, this changed everything this trial did. Again, in 1925, there was a law on the Tennessee docket that said no one could teach evolution in the public school system. I think we've kind of flipped that upside down today. Now we can't teach creation in the public school system. But I'm not going there today. Okay, we'll stay off of that. But this is what the law was. So what happened was there was no problem with it. The law was putting along pretty well. But the ACLU, everybody's favorite organization, the ACLU wanted someone to fight this case. They had no one to fight it. There was no issue. No one was teaching evolution in the schools. The government was trying to pretend that this was not ever going to happen, so they put a law on the courts. And so what happened was the ACLU said, find anybody we can that will take this trial. And what it was John Scopes was a substitute biology teacher who had never ever taught evolution even one time. And they got his name up there. They got him to be willing to do this. So he at one point started proclaiming he was going to teach evolution in the school, even though he had no opportunity. He was a substitute teacher. He came in to do what he was called to do that day. But the ACLU had their guy, and John Scopes was the man. You've got two major figures in this thing. You've got Clarence Darrow, who was an atheist, and you can look him up, very proclaimed atheist, very intelligent lawyer, to defend John Scopes and the opportunity that he has to teach evolution in the schools. Then you've got William Jennings Bryan. He is the prosecuting attorney in this case. He was three-time presidential candidate, very intelligent man, loved the Lord, and wanted to defend the concept that we can teach about God in the school systems. So you see you have both sides. At this point, you look back on the case, John Scopes, even though he proclaimed he was about to teach in evolution and all these things, never spent an hour in jail, was never ridiculed by anyone because of his stance. Instead, he looks like a free thinker who's just wanting to search the world. We find out later that Clarence Darrow, his attorney, his whole objective here at this point was to rid public education of evidence for a creator. That was what he was wanting to do, and he was very loud about it. During the trial, you look at some of the problems we had. William Jennings Bryan had limited, if any, ability to deal with the evidence and very little cross-examination of the expert witnesses. He didn't get any opportunity because Clarence Darrow was really good at keeping him off track and not allowing him to look at the case and the evidence at hand. At one point, he got so frustrated that William Jennings Bryan, a Christian man, says, I'm going to go on the trial and I'll just defend Christianity myself. Now, again, he's not a theological scholar. So when he got on the stand and they asked him questions such as, where did Cain's wife come from? You're going to be in a mess from the beginning because no one can answer that, let alone a non-scholar. And so at this point, he was pretty much ridiculed for his attempt to defend Christianity. Again, it kind of happens. The media portrayed creation as a foolish position, whereas evolution was never brought under scrutiny at all. Okay? All it was is it made creation look very, very poor. Every piece of evidence they had in 1925 at this trial has at this point been falsified. Remember us talking about Piltdown Man? That was there. Nebraska Man, we didn't talk about it. It was just a pig's tooth. We found that out 30 years later. But all the things that they had on there were found to be falsified, yet William Jennings Bryan was never given the opportunity to look at any of it. And again, we get movies like this. The media decided in this. The media changes everybody. Understand that. Listen to when they write and when they speak, because their words mean a lot. They decided that creation was religion, education, and evolution was science. Creation was religion, evolution was science. This is what ended up with this. This Inherit the Wind drama, as again, if you've seen it as a stage play, it's a great play too. But it's all it is propaganda. None of it really represents truly what happened. Again, you look at it, all the Southern boys, okay, we love our God out here. You hear that. It just doesn't sound intelligent. That's supposed to be Tennessee. They don't speak like that in Tennessee. But you see what they did, the way they portrayed the intelligence. You look at the main actor in this thing, Spencer Tracy. He's eloquent, and he's clear, and he's forceful, and he's focused. And all the Christian people, all Southern boys, we love our God down here. Okay. Deep South. Sounds like a Mickey Mouse cartoon or something. But you see that. Scopes is shown to be an open-minded defender of truth and freedom. The drama, which is supposed to encourage freedom of thought, is used to form public opinion in such a way as to exclude allowing evidence for creation in schools, thus limiting access to information to help form the truth. Again, I love science. But should we not give everyone the opportunity to hear at least the side of creation? At this point, 1925 is 90 years ago, and we've flipped everything upside down. This is the kind of thing that sets everything. That Scopes monkey trial changed everything for us. At this point, religion was one thing and science was another. And since that point, it's been changed. We're in the book of Proverbs this morning. Again, a great book written by Solomon, and he most likely wrote most of them, but we know that he compiled them. He asked for wisdom, and God gave it to him. Written somewhere around 931 BC. Chapter 1 actually gives the purpose of Solomon's concept of Proverbs. Its purpose is to impart moral discernment and develop mental clarity. Who doesn't want that? I want that. I want to be mentally clear. Let's all stand together. We're in chapter 8, verses 24 to 29. I want to honor God's word as we stand. I was born when there were no watery depths and no springs filled with water. I was delivered before the mountains and hills were established, before He made the land and the fields, or the first soil on earth. I was there when He established the heavens, when He laid out the horizon on the surface of the ocean, when He placed the skies above, when the fountains of the ocean gushed out, when He set a limit so that the waters would not violate His command, when He laid out the foundations of the earth. Let's pray. Dear Lord, You are mighty, and I thank You for Your word. I thank You for Solomon writing Your word, Lord, being inspired to inspire us today. Let us understand what You see about creation, Lord, in the book of Proverbs. We say this in Your name. Amen. Please be seated. A little bit of backstory here. Solomon was probably the greatest king of Israel. David was a great king, but Solomon was a much better king. Again, they all had their ups and downs, but we remember that David wasn't given the opportunity to build the temple because of the sins in David's heart, whereas Solomon fulfilled that and was able to complete it. Solomon was the son of David and Bathsheba, and even though he wasn't the oldest, he became king. David loved Bathsheba the most. He said, your son's going to be the one. Okay, again, that's just how it worked back then. At one point, the oldest son, Adonijah, declared himself king, and there was a big fight. Again, the Old Testament is great reading. It's a great storytelling. I mean, there's so many passion and energy in the Old Testament. But at one point, even though he declared himself king, a priest anointed Solomon. Therefore, that's the end of it. Again, Solomon inherited great wealth, but David had multiplied it through his knowledge of a blessing. You see that Solomon was given a lot from David, but Solomon was able to make so much more of it. Again, God said that He would grant a request to Solomon. This is what changed Solomon's life. 1 Kings 3:9. So give your servant an obedient heart to judge your people and discern between good and evil. God loved Solomon, and He gave Solomon the opportunity for one wish. Here's your wish. What do you want? I'm going to grant it. You make your wish. You make your request. And because I'm God and because I can do anything I choose, I will honor it. And of all the things that Solomon could have asked for, you and I would probably ask for health and strength, or the ability to financially be all of our bills paid off, or to be able to help other people. He asked for wisdom. And that's why he is so wise. And God was pleased with this request in 1 Kings 4. God gave Solomon wisdom, very great insight and understanding, as vast as the sand on the seashore. What a guy he is. Again, this is a person even the atheists today or the secular writers will offer up as a wise person. They'll use it kind of as an allegory or a metaphor. But they know that Solomon, and that name Solomon, equates to wisdom. The whole world knows this. Again, many came for his wisdom. 1 Kings 4 again. People came from everywhere, sent by every king on earth who had heard of his wisdom, to listen to Solomon's wisdom. And that's a big deal for a king to send his people to someone else to hear his wisdom. This is the kind of man that God turned Solomon into, because Solomon's heart was to love God. Solomon didn't want possessions for himself. God had taken care of him. He wanted to be able to impart on others the knowledge and the wisdom of God. And this is what we see happening here. And he kept that wisdom until his old age. Sadly, as we sometimes get a little older, we forget our early ways and what God has for us. You see in 1 Kings 11, when Solomon was old, his wives seduced him to follow other gods. He was not completely devoted to Yahweh his God as his father David had been. What a sad story. You know, we only remember the last part of it. We never remember the first good things. And yet this is how he ended. You know, as a man who was seduced by all the wives that he had. We've all heard the stories of the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of wives, and all from different backgrounds, something he wasn't supposed to do. Disregarded God's rules, and they drew him off. It's going to happen. Again, that's Solomon's life in a nutshell. This morning, let's see what he says about creation. The first thing I want you to know is that God created wisdom before water. Wisdom before water. Verse 24. I was born when there were no watery depths and no springs filled with water. Again, in this chapter, we see Proverbs 8 is the largest exposition that Solomon talks about creation. Now, understand there are so many aspects here we could just delve into. Every time I'm wanting to run off on this tangent because there's so much good wealth of wisdom here, but we have to stay to creation. So we're going to try to keep focused on that. It says here, I was born. Who is I? Who is I at this point? Again, you look at chapters 8 and 9, all of chapter 8 and 9 talk about wisdom. Wisdom becomes almost a person. It's used with that personal pronoun I. Wisdom takes on a life of its own. Again, God made wisdom. 8, 4, and 5, going back a few verses here. People, and this is wisdom speaking, I call out to you, my cry is to mankind. Learn to be shrewd, you who are inexperienced. Develop common sense, you who are foolish. He's begging for people to listen to him. Him or her, whatever wisdom is. He's begging, she's begging that the world listen. Because I've got so much to give, I can make your life so much better if you listen. Because we know that God created wisdom, and if this wisdom is God created, then it's going to lead them in the ways of God. It's going to bless everyone around. This is what's happening. Wisdom is calling out to mankind to listen. The personal pronoun I was born. Wisdom was born. This is a quality you give to a person, yet here, this idea of wisdom has this quality of personal emotion here. Again, I'd love to get in the depth of wisdom and discuss it, and at some point we'll come back to it. But we need to get back on with it. 8:22 and 23, back to creation concept. The Lord made me at the beginning of His creation. Again, the Lord made wisdom at the beginning of His creation, before His works of long ago. I was formed before ancient times, from the beginning, before the earth began. So what came first, the chicken or the egg? What came first, wisdom or the earth? Very clearly, the wisdom came first. Wisdom was made before God made everything. So at this point, with reference to age, wisdom is much older than the earth. Is much older than any of us. And yet, sadly, it's the one thing we don't search for. Goodness, in this world, we're not that smart. You know? Even scientists with all their degrees and all their learning are hunting a way that there's no wisdom in. Again, we're talking about these things week after week. I'm not that smart in these areas, but I'm at least a thinker. And if I can give them enough wrenches in their cogs of their evolutionary process, and I'm not trying, what can someone who really had education do? And yet they plod along with it. And I'm going to show you how they even retract on their ideas in a few minutes. But this is it. This tells us the writer of Proverbs believes God created the world. Yet He created wisdom before He created the world. Again, he's not explicit here. You have to understand how he's going, but it's very subtle. Wisdom was created before God created this. Therefore, God created this. God made both of these things. If wisdom was created at the beginning before His works of long ago, then Proverbs is saying God did the works of long ago. Solomon, the wisest man to ever walk the face of the earth, any Bible scholar would say that. He believed God created the world. Now, are you wise? Are you as smart as Solomon, at least in that area? I hope so. I hope so. And if not, we got time to get you there. But this is what this intelligent man said. We have Solomon affirming the creation of all things by God. God made all things, and it's just like it's commonplace, of course. There's no other discussion. God did these things. Why would I even discuss this? This is common knowledge to Solomon. He said, I was born when there were no watery depths. The writer says at some point there were no watery depths. There was nothing, and it reminds me of Genesis 1:1. Remember this? In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Before this there was nothing except wisdom and God Himself. Again, it just is hard to fathom. It's hard to contemplate. My little mind. Wisdom has an eternal feel much like God, yet it was created by God. You need to ask for wisdom. Again, if you're having issues in your life today, you don't know where to go, which path to take. Some of you have so many great opportunities ahead. Which one is it? God will tell you. Ask for wisdom. Ask for clarity. Wisdom will come. Wisdom's begging to come because it's just something imparted from God. It's beauty that God gives to all His creation who asks for it. Again, the word depths here, that when there were no watery depths, reminds me of Genesis 1:2. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness covered the surface of the watery depths. He's using the same terminology. And it's not just the same English word, it's the same Hebrew terms. Solomon understood how God had created the world. He understood the concept of the book of Genesis. He is affirming it here in his writings 1,000 years later. Solomon believes in the Genesis account. Are you as intelligent, as wise as Solomon? I hope so. I think most of us in this room are. Again, but we're discussing creation in the wisdom books this morning. Did God create the earth? And the question on many evolutionists, this is not one they like to talk about. Is it a fish? Is it an animal? Or is it a bird? The North American loon gives them fits. It does. You wouldn't think a simple bird right there would give them fits. But loons can dive over 200 feet deep. Okay? You look at the loon, the thing that's different about a North American loon versus a duck or a goose is that the bones are solid. You got this bird here with solid bones. They're not supposed to have that. They're supposed to have hollow bones. Hollow bones allow birds to fly for long distances. It allows them to float very well. You look how low that duck is, that bird there is floating in the water. A goose or a duck would be much higher. But that's what allows them to go 200 feet for evidently the good fish. I don't know. Again, you think. Again, all parts of a loon are designed for deep water. At what point did one bird say, I want the good fish down on the bottom? Where did that evolutionary process come? You'd think there'd be plenty on top. You know, the rest of them do pretty well. But this bird, some bird, if we're going to follow the evolutionary process, 1 million years ago, wanted to go to that good fish that was about 150 feet down. You look at the way the loon is designed, it has small wings. Makes it quick underwater. You just follow those fish all the way all over the place. It has large webbed feet. You look at this bird, it needs 4 miles of runway to take off. It just has to flap and flap because it's so heavy with its bones, and it can't fly very far. It'll go from lake to lake to get on the other side of the lake. But those feet are flapping to get it out there. Again, you look at it, these solid bones also give it low buoyancy. It's going to be able to go deeper. A duck or a goose could never go down that far because they're just fighting too much. Just the buoyancy's wanting to kick them back up. The problems with the loon here are this. There is no fossil evidence of bones slowly changing over time. You can ask any geologist, any evolutionist. There are no fossils anywhere that show this median stage. Light bones, heavy bones. Here's the guy in the middle. There's nothing. Yet they say that at one point some bird wanted to go deep, and therefore a mutation caused it to do this or caused it to do that. You need all of the additions at one time to make this thing right. The structure of the two types of DNA are totally different. Totally different. You cannot have the DNA from a goose that will help a loon modify into a heavy-boned bird. It's not going to happen. There are too many changes. Millions of changes have to happen. We need big feet versus small feet. We need small wings versus big wings. We need hollow bones versus thick bones. And then you look at the third problem is the structure surrounding the bones. You don't just have the bones themselves. You have to have heavier ligaments. A heavier bone takes more energy to move. You have to have stronger muscles. Put the muscles on a goose on this loon, and that bird's not going anywhere. There are multiple changes that would have to occur at one time. When we talked about the biological machines a few weeks ago, remember that? There was no way they could have all of those changes at one time. If you have this one little small change, all of a sudden you've got a duck with big feet. That duck's not going to make it very long, okay? Because it needs small feet to be able to fly as well as it does. So that duck would be removed through the second law of thermodynamics. We've talked about these things. This one gives them fits. The next time you talk to an evolutionist, just bring up the North American loon. So we see that God creates wisdom before water. God creates wisdom before land. Verses 25 and 26. I was delivered before the mountains were and the hills were established, before he made the land, the fields, and the first soil on the earth. Once again, I was delivered. This is wisdom speaking. Wisdom was sent to man. And what's neat about this, the Hebrew, and again, you know I love the words. When you look at your English translations, and I want you to read them all that you can, understand they're trying to give you a translation you can halfway make sense of. You may not understand the subtlety of the crazy Hebrew language or the way that the Greek language is put together. So they're trying to translate it in a way that kind of makes sense that you get the big picture. None of us are necessarily wanting to be theological scholars. We just want to know the Lord better. So when you look at your English translations, they do this. But what's neat about this word delivered here is the word hulatati in the Hebrew, and it means to whirl or dance. It just makes me think of wisdom just dancing toward people. Just you see the beauty. If you've been to the ballet, I love going to the arts. It's one of my favorite things. You ever have extra tickets, I'll go with you. I love going to the arts. But you see something like a beautiful, talented person who's been working all their life to make these beautiful, graceful movements. And this is what you see with wisdom coming to man. It was delivered. It danced on the hills. Before there were mountains or hills. It's, again, wisdom is usually thought of as a she. And you got this beautiful ballerina across the stage. We have creation seeing the beauty of wisdom whirling onto the scene. That's what the Hebrew says. Yours says it was I delivered or I came or whatever it is. But this is the beautiful imagery that God paints with reference to wisdom. Solomon writes with reference to wisdom. He understands the value and the beauty of wisdom. Something that we just don't. You know, you just watch the television today and you see where people place their time and their energy. You know, don't ever watch MTV, but you see a commercial on the MTV Cribs and these people with all the money in the world, they don't care a lick about wisdom. They want the newest Bentley. You know, they want the next Ferrari that comes out. There's no wisdom there. You can't impart that to someone else and offer that as a glorious reward that we're able to get. Anyway, this wisdom, I was delivered before the mountains. Again, Genesis 1:9. Then God said, let the water under the sky be gathered into one place and let the dry land appear. The writer of Proverbs affirms God's creation of the world. There's no doubt. Solomon believes, the wisest man to ever walk the face of the earth, believes that God did it this way, and there's no doubt in his mind. Does that make him foolish? Or does that make him truly wise? And this morning, what do you want to be? Foolish or wise? He also came before he was whirled on. However you want to look at wisdom, I see it as a beautiful thing, probably a she, you know, like a boat's a she. Let's look at wisdom as a she, just beautiful whirling onto the scene. Before there were hills. Before there was land. We see in this chapter that God created wisdom. We also see that God created wisdom before he created land. We see an order here. Again, I'm talking about creation. I've got to bring up some of these things. I want you to be able to defend yourself. Understand all these little points are on the website. You can go and look on there's a notes tab at the very top. We've added it just for this, and you can look these up. Everyone will say that, oh yes, these are problems. Now, there will be people that will crawl out from under rocks, and here's how we defend this, and here's how evolutionists would say that this is answered. But understand it gives them fits, these kind of things. But I read an article, and Brandon always sending me good stuff. I read an article this week that says it says no Big Bang question mark. That was it. And the next line said, quantum equation predicts universe has no beginning. Now, for the last 60 or 70 years, they've been telling us about the Big Bang. 1964 is when that term came into effect. Same with the year with the Beatles. You know, I think Star Trek, and again, it is a sad weekend for us Star Trekkies. Leonard Nimoy passed away. Thank you for that. He passed away. So us Trekkies are very sad this weekend. But a lot happened in 1964. Okay, Big Bang was occurring at that same time. But listen to a few things that happened out of this article. It deals with Einstein's theory of general relativity, which we talked about at the beginning. Now, you can look this article up at physics.org. Again, a great peer-reviewed site. Very serious site. And here's what they said. A few things. Evidently, the universe has no beginning and will have no end. These are the top scientists saying, we may have been wrong with the Big Bang. It may be God itself. Now, they're not going to use the word God, but they're saying it has no beginning. Now, how does this not have a beginning? At some point, should it not make logical sense? But I want to throw a few quotes out here. Now, they deal with theories of dark matter and dark energy. The universe has always been and always will be. But here are the quotes I want you to get out of this. They wrote themselves in the article, a secular article from physics.org. The Big Bang singularity, and that's how we believe it all. They believe it all started. All the mass, the singularities where something goes to infinite. The mass was infinite. It couldn't hold itself anymore, and it exploded. Okay? Here's what it says. The Big Bang singularity is the most serious problem of general relativity because the laws of physics appear to break down there. I thought they had this thing worked out. I could have swore that they had the general theory of relativity figuring out that that's what caused the Big Bang. And yet the only problem they have with that theory is the Big Bang. I'm not that smart, but that seems foolish to me. Now listen to this second one. Although the Big Bang singularity arises directly and unavoidably from the mathematics of general relativity, some scientists see it as problematic because the math can explain only what happened immediately after and not before the singularity. Once again, they have no idea how we came about. No idea. Okay? Give it 5 more years and they'll reinvent it another way. It's got to, at some point, make sense. You can look that article up. It's got all kinds of beautiful diagrams and PhDs all referenced all through it. Cambridge and Oxford and MIT. And yet now they're saying there was no Big Bang. It's always been. And everything we thought explained relativity and the Big Bang, we have no idea what it means. So here's what it must mean. If we can't figure it out this way, it's got to be this thing. Ooh, it's exciting. I thought they had it worked out. Maybe they don't. They tell us it all happened from the Big Bang, and now they say physics breaks down at the Big Bang. As an engineer, I would be embarrassed to write my name on a paper like that. So now, essentially, universe is God. God creates wisdom before water. God creates wisdom before land. God creates wisdom before the heavens. 27 to 29. I was there when he established the heavens, when he laid out the horizon on the surface of the ocean, when he placed the skies above, when the fountains of the ocean gushed out, when he set a limit for the sea so that the waters would not violate his command, when he laid out the foundations of the earth. Wisdom was there. When he, over and over and over again. As I've told you over and over again, when the Hebrew repeats itself, it's emphatic. They don't have some kind of strong tense. They're saying, understand, when God did this, God did it, God did it. Solomon is very clear as he's writing this. God did it, God did it. No one else but God did it. Understand that this morning. No matter what these physicists say. I think it's fun. Have fun with your theories. But some point come to something so we can all have a little bit of stability here, and you're not changing it every few years or every few decades as you get more science. We are going over this and over this again. Wisdom through Solomon is crediting all of creation to him or God. All of it was created by God. I was there before the heavens. Wisdom says that she was there before God creates the heavens. We've talked about that. He's repeating himself here. God laid out the horizon. Now this is interesting. It really says in the Hebrew here that he inscribed a circle on the face of the earth. Now there may be a version out there that says that. It's much more clear. It's much more fanciful. It shows that God didn't like mismatched looking thing. He made this beautiful sphere that we work on today. He didn't just lay it out there. He inscribed a circle. And when that happened, he allowed gravity and all the other forces that these scientists love to talk about and ruminate about. He pulled the water into the form of a sphere. Again, that's what it means in the Hebrew. Again, but when you get your translations, they're trying to do a word-for-word translation. This Hebrew word, what's the best one? This. This Hebrew word, this. They don't want to explain it in long detail. Your Bible will be 5 times as big. They want you to just enjoy it. Wisdom was there when God placed the skies above. This does not imply a Big Bang. Again, God could have told Solomon this. Solomon was wise. He would have understood if God was very clear. Here's how I created it. He doesn't say that. He says God was there when these things happened. God placed them where He chose. That is above ground. He wanted the sky here and He wanted the ground here. He was very clear, this is how I'm going to make it. Nowhere else is going to make sense, and nowhere else am I going to be pleased. This is how He did it. Wisdom was there when the fountains gushed out. Now this could refer to the Noah flood. Again, if you read through the Noah account, it talks about fountains gushing from the base of the ocean, filling up the world with water. Again, that could be what the writer's talking about. Even before Noah, wisdom was here. Wisdom was there when God set a limit for the sea. God didn't just say, boom, or even if, some of us will give God the Big Bang. We'll just say God made it. Some of you will. I hope not. I hope we're beyond that. I hope we've kind of talked that the Big Bang concept does not help us as Christians. Okay? We need to go beyond that and understand that God chose to explicitly put everything where He chose. Not just to allow it to explode and then maybe do a little bit of forming after. It's a weak, slippery slope if we go that way. Understand that. I haven't really talked about that, but we may get into it before we finish this. But God wanted it where it wants. He doesn't say here that it's happened over billions of years of creation. God set the limit and made that happen. Here's where I want the land. Here's Canada. This is going to be America in about 8,000 years. We've got South America. This is where I want the water, and you're not going to impose upon the land because my people are going to be there. He was specific and explicit with the way He wanted it. Every time we get into this, we find out more and more how God physically formed these things the way He chose. He wasn't just some absent God who started out, if you hear some stuff, let's just throw some atoms out there and let's see what happens with them. He made them where He chose. God laid these out like an architect building a building. He put the foundations where He chose of the earth. That's what a good architect does. That's what our God does. That's the kind of God you serve. I hope you serve Him. Again, I hope you understand how great He is. From the beginning, God has been meticulous with His creation. How much He loves you and how much He loves you. The life He's going to give you and the way He's going to design your life. This is what God has done from the beginning. Then He sent His Son. Solved that problem for us too. Because He gave us such beauty that we chose our own direction. At that point, He had to send His Son that we have life again. What a great God. Everything we could need, He has solved. If we don't understand or learn anything from this, you need to understand that if God is that meticulous with some dirt, how much more is He going to spend time on you? How much? Amen? Anyone? This is the God that we serve and the God that can work in your life today. And I know you've got issues because I've got them too. I've got things I'm concerned about, things I'm worried about, things, oh Lord, what am I going to do? God says, just turn it over to me. And I'm speaking to myself right now. Turn it over to me and I will take care of this for you, James. Just let it go. Go have fun. Go out and play again. You tell your kids, go out and play. This is what He wants to do with this. It's freeing for us. Life can be so much simpler. It can be so much more joyful. Our last thing this morning, the problem of the missing matter. I'm going to let you watch the first 2 minutes of this little clip. And again, I'm going to cut it off. You can go look it up on YouTube and you can find it yourself. It's an hour-long thing or something like that, talking about the missing matter in the universe. Watch this.
Atoms are extremely versatile things. In various sizes and configurations, they make all kinds of stuff. Stuff like us, our coffee, our tennis rackets. Even children are made of atoms. Stuff made of atoms is everywhere. The sun, planets, galaxies, an entire universe of stuff made from atoms. Except there's a problem. It turns out that the entire universe isn't just made of atoms.
It's a very bizarre concept which is hard for us, I think, to conceptualize.
Something we can't see is pulling the strings of the cosmos.
It could be dust, it could be planets, or could it be...
Where'd it go? Did it die on us? You don't need to see the end. It really doesn't go anywhere. I just wanted to whet your appetite a little bit with it. But we see in this video, and you watch it, that the problem is out there. Every scientist knows it. Every physicist knows it. Every cosmologist knows it. They know we've got a problem. And you look at this, gravity depends on matter. And again, one of the first things I learned in engineering school was about gravity and how matter and gravity are interrelated. They've calculated how much matter is in space. We know how much gravity we have. We should be able to extrapolate backwards for how much matter and mass should be in the universe to make the gravity that we have today. Multiple facilities around the world have calculated the exact amount missing, which is 95.7%. We're missing 95.7% of the expected matter we should have to have gravity that we have today. They answer this thing with cold, dark matter and energy, yet no one's ever seen it, detected it, or knows where to look for it. Okay? Remember us talking about Oort clouds? Those things that just mysteriously throw comets back into our solar system so we can look at them? They can't predict it, yet that's the only thing they can make up to answer why we have comets today. They should have been burned out millions and millions and millions of years ago, if this is all true. They tell us they have all the answers, and yet they're missing 90% of the 6% of the matter of the universe. Can't find it. Don't know where to look for it. There's an interesting poem. You can look up the whole poem. Just a line or two by Hughes Mearns. As I was going up the stair, I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I wish he'd stay away. Does that not kind of sound like our friends here? They're looking for something that's not there. They're going to continue to be afraid for it, can look for it over and over again. Let me read it one more time. As I was going up the stair, I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I wish he'd stay away. The Bible corroborates itself. It backs itself up over and over again, and it gives us a simple explanation for everything. And what's neat is that God gives us the ability to fathom it. God gives us the ability to research and send satellites all the way out to places like Jupiter and Venus. We've got pictures of these because man, has sent beautiful mechanical machines out to take pictures of this. God allows us to explore the universe that He's given us. But we've got to understand that every part of it's going to lead back to Him. Every part of it is. Unless we just try to make up foolish things like dark matter or cold energy or things that are just theories. Again, if you got to the end of that, they had 4 scientists, all PhDs, very, very well established. And the last guy, I love the British language, but one guy says, I don't know what it is, but I think I can figure it out. Another guy says something about, I think I know what it is, and I'm going to name it this. And another guy says this. The fourth guy is an older guy. He says, all it is gnomes in our backyard. That's it. That's all these theories are gnomes in our backyard. Again, PhD from Oxford. Yet this is what he says about those people believing these crazy things. At some point, we have to know that God is bigger. Genesis tells us how God created the world. Job reaffirms that. Amos reaffirms that. Proverbs reaffirms that. If you have trouble with Genesis, I've given you more trouble in the Bible this morning. All I've done is make you have more trouble with this great book that we get to read through. At what point are you going to say, maybe they don't know what they're talking about? Understand, there's one of our people here that is staying out until I get off this sermon series. I have affronted them by actually having them question what they've heard in school. This person doesn't have a PhD, just a guy who watches the internet. But evidently it's a big deal to this person. This is what they believe, and they're going to, no, la, 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 I'm not going to hear it. La, 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 don't talk to me, I'll come back when it's all done. Understand, a thinker will at least explore something beyond themselves. And if I can't allow science to make sense, maybe, just maybe, God did this thing He said He did thousands of years ago. Again, if you believe God can do these things, He once again can solve the small problems in your life. And that's where we need to get to. We need to get to that point. Solomon, the wisest man, knew God could solve his problems because God created the universe. God had given him wisdom. God had been there from the beginning. Are you as wise as Solomon? Are you this morning?